Hi, I'm Rory from RPM Power. Today I want to give you a quick tutorial on tightening cable or cable maintenance on your rack. This is a very important aspect of the entire rack functionality because the actual cable attachment is what it anchors basically every single movement that you do, every single exercise movement that you do. And it's very, very important that these two lugs or these bolts are actually as tight as they can be to ensure that they're clamping down firmly on the cable at all times during your exercise movement. Depending on the rack that you have, today we're just using a V3 Smith rack for the purposes of demonstration. It may be that you have 2 or 3 of these style bolts, or they could be hex grubs that could be recessed into the anchor attachment, but it's immaterial. Your rack will have come with generally a hex tool to allow you to tighten these. And again, as I say, there are 2 of them. The cable itself has an insulated material. It's a steel cable with an insulated material for smooth performance. In some cases, if you fail to tighten this completely, you will be able to use your rack a light weight setting. But as soon as you start lifting heavier weights, you could be sitting there doing an exercise or standing there pulling, and all of a sudden the cable will release from the anchor attachment, resulting in potential injury. So it's essential that you apply, using the correct hex tool, the maximum amount. I can't even turn that anymore because we've tightened these very well when we have them on display here. You are literally going to tighten both of these, as you can't over tighten them. You can't strip them. I'm putting a lot of pressure on here. Literally use, as long as you're using the correct tool, as hard as you can go, they won't tighten anymore. And they're clamping down firmly on the cable. So one of the most important aspects of a rack is that the cable is seated in the pulley at all times. In this particular rack, and again, all of the racks are different, they have a series of pulleys which guide the cable throughout its smooth rotation. Periodically, it's wise to check to make sure that there's tension in the cable, because if the cable becomes loose, and if you're not using the rack correctly, there's a potential for the cable to slip out of the channel of the pulley. Now, it's kind of rare because these pulleys are very, very deep. But the last thing you want is for a loose cable to jump out of a pulley and get trapped along the side of the axle of the pulley, which potentially may strip the insulation off the cable as you're using the actual rack. So each rack will require a certain amount of tension on the cable. You don't want to see any slack in there, because slack cables can dance off the top of the pulley, and it can, as I say, can strip the insulation off. So always make sure that the tension is applied to the cables before and after you use your rack. That will guarantee smooth, optimum performance of the rack during use. Now that we've firmly attached the cable to the anchor point by tightening those screws as tightly as they can be, it's time to actually test the rack to ensure that the cable isn't going to come loose unexpectedly during use. The best way to do that is to load your rack. In this case, we're using the V3, and we've loaded it with about 100 kgs of plates. Now, ideally, you would actually load it with more. This rack is rated for about 150 kg on that stack. But in this case, as a demonstration, we've loaded it with 100 kgs of plates. So we're going to get an attachment, move the dolly down, and I'm going to do a low row. This is the easiest way because it allows you to put maximum pressure on the rack. So in this case, I'm literally going to pull it as vigorously as I can, and then hold, and then release, and again, and again. And that pretty much guarantees that the actual cable has been firmly clamped by that attachment without any risk of injury during that exercise movement, because everything is away from you. And if a cable was to suddenly release, there's no risk of injury. I hope you found this tutorial useful. Thank you.